let's finish with our series dealing with the so-called slave Bible. And we'll be coming from Nahum, the book of Nahum, chapter 2. And we'll try to figure out, let's see if we can figure out why those who had enslaved our ancestors did not want them to have access to the book of Nahum. And specifically, we're going to be speaking about Nahum chapter 2 at this time. So Nahum chapter 2, verses 1 and 2, it begins with the warning, how Nahum is warning Nineveh of the soon to come attack on them, and how Judah will be restored after this attack on them. So those who enslaved our ancestors never wanted to give them any type of hope that they will ever be restored, no type of restitution or anything. So, and also they would not want them to even consider that they themselves will be, that retribution will come to those who had enslaved them. So they did not want our ancestors to have access to this book because, first of all, it talks about their restitution, and then they would feel like, that they too would be judged, just like the Ninevites was judged for their wickedness. Nahum chapter 2, verses 3 through 5 says, in these verses describes the siege that would take place in Nineveh. And then Nahum chapter 2, 6 through 10 speaks of the fall and destruction of Nineveh and how they were going to be plundered of all their riches. So, and I thought this was interesting because I was reading in the King James Version, and chapter verse 10 reads, she is empty and void and waste, and the heart melteth, and the knees smite together, and much pain in all loins, and the faces of them all gathered blackness. So I'm like, was the Ninevites black? But then when I read it in the New King James Version, it said, and all their faces are drained of color. I read it in the New Messianic Version, and it says the faces of them all gathered blackness. Then I went down to the Good News Translation, and it says, now somehow they got faces grow pale here. NIV, faces grow pale. The New Living Translation says their faces pale and trembling. The New International Translation, they all read it, their faces turn pale. So we see the King James Version, and I looked at some older versions, like from the 1500s and the 1600s. It all read blackness at that time. So we just see how they try to distort information and change things over time to fit their narrative. But that's what I feel like. So in Nahum chapter 2, verse 11 through 13, it declares how the Most High was against Nineveh and they would become desolate. The voice of their messengers would be heard no more. Nahum chapter 2 has a terrifying warning to Nineveh. At the same time, it is encouraging to Judah that they will be restored. Our oppressors don't want to hear anything about them ever paying for the crimes they committed against our people. And they don't want to hear anything about us ever being restored. So that is my opinion as to why they removed they removed Nahum chapter 2 from the so-called slave Bible. And till we meet again, be blessed.